up? Welcome to Friends of Kayla. How's it going?
It's going so well. I'm so happy I'm officially your friend.
Me too.
And we can do this.
It took us a little while, but we got there.
I know. It took you coming to my birthday.
And then you reached back out to me and we're like, let's record.
Let's do it.
No choice but to say yes.
100%.
And now we're here. We're both in Miami. We both, I think, moved here, or now we're here kind of around the same timeline, right? When did you move to Miami?
Yeah, I bought my house in May, but I didn't get I'm a Canadian, so I didn't get my visa until essentially the end of this year. So I moved in December, end of December, like the day after Christmas.
Yeah, so you're very, very new.
In Canada, it's called Boxing Day.
On Boxing Day.
Yeah.
Right. So you're from Toronto?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get into all of it. You know, I do want to say I met you at a very interesting time in your life, I think. You know, turning 30.
Yes.
Full hair transplant. Sorry. The hair's looking amazing.
The hair transplant was something that I've always wanted to do. And then later learned that most men think about their hair more than anything else. Like I would think about my hair, no exaggeration, at least 100 times a day. I wouldn't leave the house without a hat. And actually, it got so bad. And I wasn't even bald, okay? I actually had good hair. But like men are super sensitive. Like I was like noticing like it was like thinning. I would check if a restaurant had a no hat policy before I would go. So I wouldn't go. But so many men are like that. So I waited 2 years because I wanted a very specific doctor. And yeah, last February. So it's been a year. So now you're getting like the full result.
Yeah. I mean, I saw what you've posted. You've been very vulnerable, which I appreciate because I think men don't often talk about how difficult it is to lose your hair. And I have a younger brother. He's stressed out all the time. You know, it's a sensitive subject. And all I want to do is help guys out there. But it's hard to like broach that subject.
Yeah. I mean, the truth is you got to take care of it. You know, it's like everything else in your life. Most men, they just like use like body wash as like shampoo, or you're not eating well, or you're very stressed. That was my situation. I lost like 40% of my hair during like my due diligence phase, and I was like, I'd finish the day of work and my keyboard would be covered in hair, just like fall. I'd like pull it out. It was super stressed.
So you were like running your fingers through your hair constantly?
Yeah, I was like stressed all day, and it was just like pulling my hair out and like not eating well and not really taking care of it with intention. And then when you're younger, you just think your hair is going to be there forever. And as you get older, you realize that you're wrong in that assumption.
Yeah, but a lot of men start losing their hair well before 30. It's very common and no one talks about it. So I'm glad. It was nice to see you at your birthday when I had just met you for the first time.
And you're like, wow, that guy's great hair.
Yeah, like it's great hair. I wonder where I got that from. Wait, so did you go to Turkey?
No,
because everyone goes to Turkey.
Absolutely not. Listen, I got nothing against it, okay? Go to Turkey if you want. I've heard a million horror stories. And at the same time, you know, I've worked really hard in my life. And if there's going to be a few things that I'm going to save money on, it's not going to be my hairline. Yeah. So I found the best doctor in the world. It's actually in Vancouver. Same guy that did like Elon Musk, Justin Bieber, like all those guys. And I waited the 2 years that you have to wait to get him to, you know, do your thing. And I eventually got the call that he's got a cancellation, and I was on the next plane to Vancouver. Next thing you know, I'm sitting in a chair for 2 12-hour days, absolutely zooted, just getting zapped on my forehead.
Yeah, and you looked really swollen after, too.
I had, like when I got there, his original line, like they kind of draw your hairline, and it's like supposed to be very natural. The original one was like 3,000 grafts. And then like I had a moment where I was like staring at myself in the mirror, and like he looks at me and he's like, "What are you looking at?" I'm like, "Bring that shit down." he drew like another line, which was like literally like 0.5 millimeter lower, and that was an additional 1,000 grafts. So it added like, and like they hand place these things. So imagine like it's 1,000. So it added complexity, and yeah, mine was super swollen.
Yeah, no, I've seen the photos. It's a little scary, but you look great now. Worth the wait.
I loved it, honestly. I did not mind it. It was super painful though. Like looking back, hands down, most painful thing I've ever like.
But I'm
done.
Sure that was the best decision you could have.
I would do it 100 times over.
Surgery
100 times over. The fact that I don't wear a hat like most of the day and like is beyond me. People used to make a joke to me like I wear a hat in the shower. Like I wear a hat all the time, and I think it's every man is constantly worried about their hair.
Yeah. No, well, I love that you talk about it and are so open about it, but we're obviously not here to just talk about your hair transplant, although good segue to the conversation, of course. But shout out to Ben Sharf, who did introduce us. Don't want to feed his ego any more than he needs to be fed, but great guy. Love that he connected us. And we did meet at an interesting time. You just turned 30, living in Miami, living in this beautiful house. You've obviously sold your business as a young founder, started your own founders club. So I want to hear a little bit more about who you are like prior to me meeting you, because obviously on social media and just with where you're at now, like people can seem so different. So take us back to like who the real Aaron is.
Well, who do you think I am?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Honestly, when I first met you, I was like, this guy is full of himself.
That's crazy.
Sorry, I have to say it.
Okay. Tell me why. Tell me how that comes to be.
I mean, listen, I'm in Miami. This is like week 3 for me, right? I'm at your house. It's this all white party. There's like 50 people and you were friendly, but you weren't like super, super warm to me. And that's fine. You had a million people to entertain. Like, I get it. It's not all about me. But I was like, you have a little bit of an ego. But also, if I were in your shoes, like, I'd probably have an ego too. So I don't blame you.
Okay, so you think egos are earned. I like that.
Yeah. You
Okay.
gotta earn it a little bit.
So the question was, who was I prior to the version that you met?
The version that I met, yes.
Oh, that's so interesting. Well, I am a big believer in everybody consistently needing to recreate themselves. So you're right. There's been many versions of Aaron. Younger Aaron, I would say maybe like 16, 17, 18-year-old Aaron, played hockey for 20 years, dropped out of school for a million reasons. But the main reason was that I needed to provide for myself and then also support my family. So, my parents went through like a pretty traumatic time. And then there was this juicing business that we started in my mom's basement where we would literally like juice fruits and vegetables, put them in mason jars and sell them out of the front door of my house. Now a juice is very common. You go to Whole Foods or Joe and the Juice. This is 2012. None of that exists. Like you go to someone's house, for example, they have like I do, like a bench and you take your shoes off at the bench. At my house, you can do that because I had a cash register. So like you'd come in and I would like ring people up at the door. That's how crazy it got. So that was like my first entry into quote unquote real business when I was really, really young. And, most of my friends partying, having a good time as any 19-year-old should do. And I was, opening our juice store from like 6 a.m. till 5, 6 o'clock at night. Did that for 4 years until we had 6, 7 locations, which again, that's really weird. Like I'm a weird guy now, 22, 23. All of my friends are like having a good time. Aaron's managing, 40 employees and 6, 7 locations all across the city, like trying to expand. Completely different life. And arguably the least healthy I've ever been because all I was doing was working. I would work 20-hour days. That was my norm. And then I recreated myself again when I was 22 and I started an online company, which was Hush, which was weighted blankets. And then I was like, how am I going to do this? I don't have any time. And I committed 6 p.m. till 1 o'clock at night every single day. So then I would, for another 7 years, I would just do 2 to 3 45-minute naps and I wouldn't sleep. And that was like another version of myself. So like there's so many versions that have led up to this moment. And I think that's the beauty of life is that you get to recreate yourself through seasons. People say, oh, I'm in this season, I'm in that season. I think recognizing that, and as I was young, I'd be like, I'm not going to do this forever, but I need to do this right now.
Yeah. I also like to say you're in your own era. Like I'm in my wellness era right now. I think you're actually kind of in your wellness era right now.
I've been in it for like 4 years and I keep finding new ways to keep that era going.
Yeah. And you've also told me as of today how to drink healthier water. So
yeah.
I'm going to be going home after this.
How many people have you went into their house and they tested the water for you?
This is a first for me,
right,
for sure. Miami tap, it's not good. Don't do it. Bad for your hair, bad to drink it. So we're working on filtering the water out. That's something I've learned from Aaron. So, but going back to kind of how you started out just as a natural like entrepreneur from a young age, you talk a lot about like sacrificing your social life. Obviously, you're working 20-hour days when most of your friends are young in college partying. And you say, I've heard you say you don't have many friends, which is ironic because I'm here at your 30th birthday and you have so many friends here. But what's business been like with friends? How have your relationships changed throughout like the time that you've spent like sacrificing your social life?
I think there's 2 types of friends. And one is the one you want, and the other one is the one that you need to set up boundaries and be very mindful of. Most people have, unfortunately, too much of one and too little of the other. So the two types are, one, those who want the best for you. We always want those people around us. And vice versa. You want the best for other people. Then there's a second friend. The second friend wants the best for you as long as it's not better than them. Unfortunately, for many, many people, the one that wants the best for you as long as it's not better than them is typically the people who are closest to you. Maybe the people you grew up with, maybe your family in some cases. It's a very dangerous person to have around you because you're already fighting every other circumstance in the world. Like, everything is built for you not to succeed, right? If you start a business, everyone's going to try to come and take your margin away. If you try to get a job, low key, the employees in your circle are trying to get the promotion over you. Your entire house, this house, like every day there's some other person knocking on my door figuring out a way to take money from me. Like everyone is coming after you. The people you spend the most amount of time with should be the one thing in your life that is there to support you, and vice versa, you support them. And unfortunately, so many people are surrounded by people that create a glass ceiling. And I realized that really, really young because I played hockey. In hockey, you have a 20-person team, but no one's really happy when you score. It's a really weird thing in your youth because you want to score more than them. And you learn that as a hockey player really young. So I really only had, like, growing up, one friend. And I knew, like, even till today, he's like my best friend. I've got many friends. You came to my birthday party, right? People flew in from all over the world for that party. Great. But they're not the same level as that one friend I have. The type of friend that I know, like, God forbid, if I die one day and I have kids, I don't even have to, like, have an agreement with him. I'm just like, he knows, I know, like, he's going to take care, and vice versa. Very rare to have, but a superpower because we've leveraged each other to get to wherever we needed to go in life.
Yeah. And, I want to talk a little bit about, like, starting a business with a friend. I don't know if Lior is or was a friend, but I want to understand, like, your take on doing business or starting a company with a close friend, because I feel like there is such a fine line between starting something with someone you're really close with, or do you start with someone that you really aren't so familiar with, and how does that, like, dynamic work?
I get this question a lot because I've only ever done business with other people. I've never done a business alone. I feel like people who can do businesses alone, I love them. They're incredible. They should be in a league of their own, but they're slightly psychotic.
They're psychopathic.
Yeah, you have to be because there's nothing to bounce off. You feel everything alone. You have to process everything alone. When it comes to choosing a partner, it's very similar, like choosing a partner in your life. They have to have the exact same values as you, and they have to be a value-driven individual. So when I met Lior, I met him at a bar. We were introduced because I was like a 23-year-old dropout. I had this business. Turns out he was also a 21-year-old dropout. He had a really successful business. One of our mutual friends was like, both of you guys are kind of weird. Why don't you go hang out with each other? I was like, okay, I'll hang out with him. He's like wearing a kippah. I'm like, I'm not religious. He's religious. I don't know. We ended up becoming friends for a year. And throughout that year, I started to realize, I'm like, you're so talented in this whole internet marketing world that I just don't understand. But I understand people and products, so I can sell anything. But I just don't know the internet stuff. So we kept toying around the idea of doing something together. And, I just spoke about, I had him on my podcast. And one of the things that came up is, and no one really knows this, so you're kind of getting this first, is when we launched the business, we needed about, I think it was like $40,000 to buy the first PO. And it was going to be $20,000 each. But my money was not in my bank account yet because, long story short, someone owed me money and it was going to take like 4 or 5 months. And no one really knew if this guy was going to pay me back, but that was all the money I had. He offered to fund the full 40,000. Didn't say, oh, I'm going to take more, I'm going to get in it. Like, just said, I'll fund it. You'll pay me when you're right. Let's keep it moving. No contract, no piece of paper, no nothing, because he knew that my values was to never lie or cheat or steal, because that was the way I was raised. And I knew vice versa, the same in him. And because we both had the same core values of how we view life and want to live life, we can move past all the bullshit. Because tough times are coming. There were many, many, many tough times. Ones where we thought we were going to close the business. And because we were both aligned at the core, we were able to always be there for each other. Specifically, when the business gets really big, so many people try to get in the way and turn you guys against each other. And him and I, that never happened to us.
Do you think anything, with having the same values has to do with the fact that you both were Jewish, had Judaism in your life?
It's very rare, and I have that now in the Founders Club. Like my business partner is not Jewish, but his values, I mean, he lives on the street. Like he's very inclined to it, but he's got very strong core values, which are very similar to the Jewish values, where, we're God-fearing individuals. We don't lie, we don't cheat, we don't steal, we give before we take. Those things are very important. Like one thing at Hush, and actually was one of the things that made us go viral for the first time, was we were donating 10% of our sales from the first day. And like that was just something we did. We didn't even really talk about it until we went on TV, and they're like, "Do you guys do anything for charity?" And we're like, "What do you mean? We've been doing this since day one." And they're like, "What?" And like we didn't even talk about it. It was just something that we believed in because that was like our Jewish values. I think it's super powerful. Again, just because two people are Jewish doesn't mean they're going to be a great set of partners. I think if two people are authentically Jewish to their core and grew up in a certain way, which is very important. Just because you're Jewish doesn't mean you grew up in a Jewish home. Doesn't mean you had Jewish values growing up. Him and I had very, very similar upbringings, to the point where like when I went to his house for Shabbat dinner, I could have closed my eyes and been in my house. So that was very powerful.
That's really special. Yeah. So how exactly were you raised? Like, what's your experience been like as a Jew, being from Toronto? Also, with a caveat, I did meet your mom at your birthday. And she is a beast, I will say. Immigrant mom on TikTok. Listen, the woman that comes into your life, she better be ready for your mother, because your mom has 5 boys. She is an Israeli classic Jewish mother, and I'm scared of her personally. Like I'm
Everyone
intimidated.
is.
Yeah.
Everyone is. I think. What was the question?
Just about your background.
Yeah.
Being
Okay.
Jewish.
I grew up to 2 Israeli parents. Right. My parents are both from Israel. My 3 other brothers were born in Israel. They were born in Netanya. My parents immigrated to Canada with 3 kids under the age of 4. Me and my younger brother were born in Canada, so there's 5 boys. My mother is from Ofakim, so for those people who don't know Israel, October 7th, like the area like ultra south, that's the area that kind of got affected. That's where my grandma is, and that's where my mom grew up. When the Moroccans were kind of exiled out of Morocco, prior to Israel even forming as a state, when they landed in Israel, all the Jews were like, let's put the Moroccans down south. Like, we want to get rid of them, so they put them down south. And so my grandma is still there. She's been there, like the same home forever. And my mom grew up super, super tough. Like, she left the house at 12. She went from kibbutz to kibbutz for years. She held a pretty difficult position in the army when she was in the army. Obviously moved, had to learn the language, still doesn't really know English, which is hilarious. She's been in Canada 30 years, doesn't know how to like read or write English still. Thank God for Siri. And, ultimately she's the toughest woman ever. And she's always held us specifically. Like, people look at us 5 boys and, for the most part, we turned out pretty good. Everyone's kind of their own version of an entrepreneur. Everyone's independent. None of us have like tattoos. None of us drink. None of us do drugs. Like, we're very like traditional in that way. And people are like, how? Like, how did you do it? And it's like, well, my mom is not only so difficult, but she set the standard. And she lives it every single day. Like, she'll still make sure to let us all know that by the time we wake up in the morning, she's already woken up at 3. She's worked out, she's finished Pilates, and she's already taking their grandkids to school, and y'all are still snoozing. Still at 63.
She wakes up at
3:30 every day. So she sets that standard, So we've always, for just by watching, she never really told us like, oh, you got to be this way, but like, watching my dad drive a truck for 28 years, watching my mom get a yellow school bus license when we were kids so that she can make money driving us all to school, because it was like 2 hours every day to all the different schools. Like, watching them both work their ass off and struggle but never complain, I think instilled those really, really strong core values that a lot of people people say like, oh, that's a great thing to do. It's like, no, I wish I grew up rich and had an amazing, and had the cottage, and we didn't do family vacations. Like, that just wasn't a thing. People do that every year. But that was just the way we grew up.
So what's it been like for you kind of coming out on the other side of that, and obviously having the upbringing that you've had and kind of living this new reality, right?
Well, I like at the same time,
And we can say it, being a multimillionaire, like you sold your business for 48 million under 30 years old. Like we're in your home, like you've made a really successful life for yourself. And there's such a contrast, right, to how you were raised and brought up to what you have built today.
I think the reason why, my reason why for doing what I did in order to get to where I am today was to always be able to take care of myself, my future family, and my current family. And, you know, looking back, did I give up my 20s essentially in order to do so? Absolutely. But it wasn't as much of a choice as it appears. I didn't like sit there and be like, oh, like I want to make millions of dollars. That was never my motivation. My motivation was like, I never want to experience the pain I felt around money as a child. Like that pain was so deep, and I've watched, you know, my parents struggle and suffer for so long that I chose to never live that reality ever again. And that person's dead. Like when I do keynotes and I speak and there's like all these entrepreneurs and founders and whatever. Like I just did one in Dubai and like really successful, but very young. These kids were amazing. And I told them, and I said like, you're lucky like that guy, that version of Aaron is dead. Because like that version, whatever you're selling, if he decided to sell what you guys are selling, you're dead. Because he was such a savage. Because my why was so strong, I was willing to literally and figuratively like cut people's heads off if I had to get what I wanted, because my pain was so deep. So many people just want the Lambos and the Ferraris and to be able to do like the Miami lifestyle because it looks amazing on Instagram. I get it. I understand the motivation there, but how are you going to compete with someone that's trying to really take care of him, like of himself and his family? That is so deep. It's too impossible. That person's dead. That person doesn't exist in me anymore.
Yeah, the motivation is so different for certain people.
Now it's very different.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
What about like getting back to like your Jewish roots? Like how were you raised? Like how did your mother raise you guys? How did she instill like Judaism in you? And like does that impact anything in terms of like how you, not even just your values, right? But today, like in the world we're living in, like you're here sitting here with your Chai necklace. You're not afraid to wear that, which is amazing. But I imagine you maybe have had some interesting like business encounters with people that may not be so receptive to seeing that. Yeah,
I mean, I was raised, you know, very conservative. We did all the holidays. My mom was, we had a kosher home, and we went to like Jewish schools. We lived in a Jewish area, surrounded by Jews all the time. But I played hockey. Hockey's not a Jewish sport. I don't even know if there is a Jewish sport. We're not like super athletic, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So I was exposed to like the non-Jewish life. You know, there's a lot of Jews that they grow up with Jews. They go to Jewish camp. They go like, it's just like you think everything is Jewish. And
you stick together, yeah.
And then you leave. Like I left very early, and now I'm in this like world where like I'm the only Jew, and they're like, "Wait, you're Jewish? I've never seen one before." You know, they just like picture like, you know, Jews in Muncie or like ultra Orthodox. You know,
with horns.
Yeah. Yeah, they're like, "Where's the hat?" You know, I was like, so I was exposed to like being the only Jew, and then at the same time, you're also exposed to kids that, you know, grow up just with stereotypes of Jews. So there's points where you're made fun of, or there's jokes, and you have to learn how to deal with that at a young age. And I remember when I was like 13, I won like an MVP award of like a tournament, you know, where you're like given like the most valuable player of the tournament. And like one of the kids was like, "Oh, like obviously the Jew gets it," you know? And I remember like I went, it was bad advice, but it's an interesting story. I went to like one of my older brothers and I was like, "Listen, like this is like the third comment that this one guy's made." And he was like on my team, you know? And he's like, "Yeah, so like, what are you gonna do about it?" And I was like, "All right, next practice, me and him." And you know, and I remember I like leveled him, and like I didn't say anything for why, but like we both knew, and it never happened again. And I was like, in a way, I was like, wow, like as a Jewish person, you know, maybe violence is not the way to always take it, but in hockey it made sense in that moment. But you have to stand up for yourself, and you have to be proud of who we are, and you know, I believe we're the chosen people, and that comes with a tremendous amount of hate and a tremendous amount of shit, and I'm no stranger to it. But at the same time, looking at like my own family's history and my grandparents and my grandfather kicked out of Soviet Russia, went into Poland, ended up in Israel. My grandma kicked out. My grandma married my grandfather. She was 16. He was 34. The only reason she married him was because she didn't want to get raped for being Jewish in Morocco. So she had to marry for protection. And because she, as a Jewish girl, they would lynch them. So then obviously it got so bad they had to leave Morocco and then move to Israel. Like, that's the reality. I'm one generation removed from that. So to sit here, you know, in my home and people say like, "Oh, you can't believe you wore." I actually I was just in Dubai and I wore this on stage, and someone, a Jewish man who was there, came to me. He's like, "That's very brave of you." And I'm like, "Dude, like, you know, my cousins have died in the war. This is not brave."
I hear you, but it is scary, like right now and I've spoken about this like on my podcast. Like I'm scared to wear my Jewish star around. I'm scared to wear my Hebrew necklace.
As a woman, I understand.
Yeah, I guess maybe it is different, but that's also, it depends where I am. And if I'm in Dubai, probably not going to wear it in Dubai, honestly.
My mom messaged me.
Bold.
She's like, "You're wearing the necklace?" I'm like, "I'm wearing the necklace." She's like, "Okay."
Listen, I give you, like, it's amazing. You should do that. And I wish more people felt like comfortable doing that. It's certainly different as a woman, and I feel a little bit.
But it's great in Miami.
Well, that's what I was going to say, and I wanted to get to that too. Is I think maybe we're both here for similar reasons, but I would love to hear like why you chose to move from Toronto to Miami.
There's a lot of reasons. One is, you know, I sold my business, and my business connection to Toronto is no longer there. So that's an ultimate luxury for any Canadian, to just like not be tied down financially or by your job. The next thing is, I really didn't like a lot of the things that the government was doing in Canada. We've had a liberal government for 10 years, and that's a tremendous amount of time. And he's going around. That's a tremendous amount of time for any government. And to make matters worse, it's become very unsafe in Canada. For everybody, but also specifically Jews. There's been schools that have been shot at and burned, and you know, to the point where there's like neighborhood watches now for Jewish communities. Like, why does a Jewish community need to have a police outpost? Like, that's horrible. That's crazy. Yeah. You know, our immigration is a disaster. The list goes on and on and on. It's really, really bad. And on top of all of that, I was the victim of a home invasion because my sale and like you think I'm public in Toronto, I'm times 1,000 to the point where like, you know, they're posting my address on Reddit and a lot of people know where I live, and like people would drive by the house, and it got really, really bad. And then also obviously I had a home invasion in the middle of the night. It was a disaster. They took it was mayhem, and I just didn't feel safe anymore.
Were you home when that happened?
I was home. I was sleeping.
What happened?
I was sleeping. It was 5 a.m. and 5 guys like broke in through the windows and like.
Oh my
God!
God!
In Canada, you can't defend yourself, so you're kind of in a situation where you're like it's almost like, in a weird way, it felt like rape, but you had to let it happen. Because if I did anything, not that I was equipped to do anything, but if I did do anything, I would be reprimanded. To jail. Yeah, right. So it's just a super difficult situation, and I really wanted to move to the U.S., and the reason why I chose Miami, I mean, amongst many, many reasons, the weather, the taxes, the people, I believe in where it's going. I think it's really early. I think it's the fastest growing Jewish population. My whole street is Jewish. I feel like there's kidnap posters everywhere. There's you don't feel like attacked. There's no protests on my street every day saying that I'm a Nazi. Like, all those things don't exist here. And I think that feels really good, being a Jewish person living in Miami.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was living in New York City for the last 6 years and walked outside and saw protests every day, you know, and having to be subjected to that.
Right? Like, that was a thing. Like, you wouldn't like say your name.
People would change their names in Ubers because they're afraid to have an Israeli name, let's say, pop up.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I have to change my name in an Uber in America. Like,
no, it's horrible and
unacceptable.
I love being in Miami for that reason. It feels like very safe here and secure, which is awesome. Like, I can feel like I can freely wear my Magen David outside, and the community here is so strong. But it does make me nervous that like in the future, I don't know, like we are in such a bubble here, right?
It's so
and it's
true.
like, what could that do for our future children and just our future as individuals? I don't know.
I think the one thing that's very important too is that you look at California, and it's the largest Jewish population, or one of the largest outside of Israel. And a stat that I saw the other day, which I thought was so interesting, is we actually lose Jews every year to assimilation. I don't know if you know that. So for those listening, assimilation is essentially when a Jewish person marries a non-Jewish person. So then you basically you sever the head of the continuation of Jewish people. And California, we lose 250,000 a year to assimilation. So we're actually not producing Jews fast enough. So the number is actually going backwards for the first time in a long time. However, in New York and in Miami, we're not losing to assimilation, which is very interesting because I think it has a lot to do with the culture and the upbringing. And I noticed that here, like obviously New York is slightly more Orthodox, but even in Miami, the intention around Jews meeting other Jews, Jews connecting with other Jews, Jews wanting to marry other Jews is so powerful here, regardless of like how conservative, reform, or religious you are. I think that's very beautiful to see.
Totally. Yeah. And it feels comforting to be around that. It's lively. The community here, you really just feel it. And it's special for sure. And we're going to Israel actually this summer through a program. Yes. That is something we can't really share right now, but very excited to get out there. We'll share it soon. But yes, that's going to be amazing to get back out there. And yeah, I'm excited to do that. So you went from playing hockey, like being in such a bro-y environment to now being this like wellness guru. How did that happen?
Well, first things first, I made some money. The reason I say that is because when I was on Sharf's podcast, he brought the same thing up, and he's like, it's very easy to do when you're not stressed all day about paying the bills. Well, first, I do stress about paying the bills. I don't know. You never get rid of that. Like, I'm always like, why the hell am I spending so much? In fact, I'm in my cheap Aaron era, actually.
Your cheap era.
Yeah,
I like
I'm saving money.
Oh,
yes.
Saving money
I
era.
spend way too much. Now I'm roll back, like Walmart, I'm rolling it back.
Okay.
Everything matters now.
Great.
Yeah,
I like this for you,
Aaron.
Aaron.
Even the other day, I'm like, wow, Uber, $32. We looked at that, right? I was like, holy shit, $32. Before I wouldn't even look. So I'm bringing it back.
Aaron's gonna be that cheap guy on dates now. That's we're gonna split the bill, honey.
I'm just cheap now.
No way.
Now.
Okay. Hopefully not with dating, and we can get into that after. But no one likes a cheap man, Aaron.
I'm cheaper.
Cheaper.
Okay. But no, ultimately, I think I'm getting older. So I'm 30 now, and I love to feel my best all the time. And I have a friend of mine who's about 15 years older. Yeah, 15 years older than me. Sold his company about 10 years ago, and he looks amazing. Like, he's glowing. Okay, he looks so good. And amongst the many things, I think the most important thing is our air and our water. So once I learned that, like, we can survive weeks without food, depending on like how much fat you have and whatever. We can survive weeks without food. We know that. We can survive. I think no one's been alive longer than like 5 to 7 days without water. No one survived like a couple hours without breathing. Like, like, you know what I mean?
Not
like,
possible.
Right. So we know that air and water are like the two most important things for like our longevity in our life. So as I started to dive into it, I started to make these tweaks. I started to get really good water. I started to get really good air and oxygen and sleep, and like little tweaks to my food, like just going grass. It's just like little things, Like,
Are you mouth taping at night?
I for the most part, I mouth tape. Yeah. It's super important, especially for men. Testosterone through the roof.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Nocturnal erections, game over. Very important for men. Okay. Yeah. Very important.
Mention mouth tape.
Very important. And just those things, and I've like started to wake up with more energy, and like I play more sports, and like I'm feeling the best I've ever felt. So it starts to become addicting. I want to do more and more and more of it. And but I'm not like a super psychopath. I'm not like blood doping and like doing like
Are you going to the grocery store scanning all of your food to see if it's clean for you?
No.
Okay,
I order my food on Instacart, like I simple. I try to get organic where I can. I do the grass-fed meats. I eat relatively the same whole foods every day, and like when I'm at a restaurant, I love dessert. Like, some people go crazy. I'm not crazy, but just I'm crazy with my water and I'm crazy with my air, knowing that those two things make up majority of the health pie.
Okay, that's completely fair. And I think those are things that you're right. It's like once you have the time and the money to invest in yourself in those areas, that's when it comes.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's easy for me to say now, but I know when I was building and I was 23, 24, like I would refund Uber Eats to save like $11. Like that was my life. I didn't have, like, I had no disposable income. I would like DJ every weekend so I can pay the rent. Like that was my life, and then I would like try to get more food from the DJ gig. So I had like a lunch for the next day, and I get them like to give me a to-go like container. Like I get it. So like when I tell people these things, I'm like, I'm also very mindful of the other side of the coin, and I know that it's a luxury that I get to do what I do, but maybe that's something you strive towards. But I still think that health and wellness is crucial to living, a best day ever type life.
Yeah, absolutely. So on that topic, what are you up to now? Wellness era, but you're also building something called Founders Club, or you've built something called Founders Club. So I want to hear more about that.
Yeah. So the Founders Club is essentially a community for high growth founders in any niche, doing anywhere between $500K to $500 million a year in sales. And the premise for it was to build a community around so much of what I didn't have growing up. So like, for example, when you sell your business, you have to hire like a really expensive lawyer. And we sold to a publicly traded company, so they have the best lawyer. Like, you just know they have the best lawyer. They're not going to mess around. I found my lawyer on a Google search, and thank God he was good. But like, that was such a stupid decision. And when people say, why did you do that? It's like, well, I was 25. I didn't know anyone that sold their business. Most of my friends were at school and partying. My dad, that's not like his world. He wasn't like a businessman that had all these resources. So I had to figure out everything on my own. And I think that humans are designed to grow and evolve within communities. That's why we join health and wellness communities. We join run clubs. We join spiritual communities. We join Chabad or whatever you're into. You want to go and immerse yourself in that environment because it's your support system. There's really never been anything like that for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are just, we got to do it alone. It's always alone or with like your one friend. And what if you didn't have a good college roommate? So now you're like mega alone. Yeah. And I didn't want any other entrepreneur to ever experience what I experienced building alone. I made millions and millions of dollars of mistakes. So what we do is we built a community. There's over 300 plus incredible founders. It's a virtual community, so they're talking in Slack all day long. We do in-person stuff. We have 6 cities: Toronto, Miami, Austin, LA, New York. We just did Dubai. And so that people can meet up, they can talk, they can hang out, and they can have a basket of resources at their fingertips and whatever they need. Like whether it's a designer or hiring or firing or raising money or selling your business or leadership training, P&L understanding, finance, personal money. What do you do with your personal money when you're in business? Do you leave it in the business? Do you take it out? Do you invest it? How do you gauge? How much do I take out? There's so many decisions to be made, and every founder does it alone. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. Wow. And so you do some events too, like at your home, right? Like in the Miami area. So what are you doing? I've seen some like wellness events that you've done maybe with the founders. Like what goes into it beyond just like obviously the business side of it, but you're building this community, you're getting people together, networking. Like what does that look like?
Yeah, like it's a combination of things. So sometimes we get together, whether it's at my house or at a restaurant, or like, we have some of our members own gyms. One of our members owned a boat. We were just on their boat. Always different venues, different reasons to get together. Sometimes it's to mastermind. So if there's like a pressing topic, a lot of founders now are talking about, how do I build my personal brand alongside my actual brand? And like, which one do I focus on more? So like, or changes. Now there's tariffs, right? So what are we doing with the tariffs? These are top of mind conversations. TikTok was going to get banned. It's like, well, what do we do now, right? So we'll all come together, and it's called a brain trust. When you put 20 incredible people in a room and you talk about one topic, so many amazing ideas come out of it, and that people can all take away and apply to their business. So that's like kind of the mastermind thing. Then there's like dinners. We get together over food. People like to hang out, connect, check in, what's going on. And then there's other times where it's just like, what? We're all into health and wellness. A big thing for the Founders Club is mind, body, and business, right? So people come to us and they say, like, do you just accept anyone that has a big business? And the answer is no. We get 250 applications a week, probably accept 5 to 8 people. And you have to at least want to be full in all of your buckets. So an example of that is if someone has like, I don't know, $100 million business, but they have no desire to be in any sort of healthy shape. Their friends hate them. They have no integrity. Maybe their kids don't talk to them. They live a miserable life. To us, that's not a successful founder. That's just someone who figured out how to make a bunch of money. Great. Awesome. There's communities out there, not us. Right? For us, it's you might not have it all, but you have to want it all. You have to want to have the deepest and most intimate relationships. You have to want your business to reach its potential. You have to want to have the strongest connection with your spouse or with your kids. You want to have your friends want to hang out with you. You want your employees to love you. All those things, you might not have it all, but at least you have to want it because there's someone in the community that has what you want and they can show you and answer the questions and kind of help guide you there.
So on that note, will you ever start a business of your own again?
Well, this is my business, but you mean like a product business?
Product business.
No, never.
Never. Why is that?
I don't, for me, I'm a very mission-driven founder. So, with Hush, we wanted to, we had a funny saying, it was to get into 1 million people's beds. Now we're, I think, like 4 million people's beds. And it was to be able to take care of my family. Founders Club is very much, it's an incredible business and it does well. Thank God. It's really hard, but it serves as a purpose to support everybody else. And it's something that I can do for the next 40 years of my life. I have a goal of helping 1,000 people eventually sell their company. And I think a lot of people within the club will do that. We've seen people have tremendous growth, both spiritually in their bodies or also just in their business, whatever angle they're focusing on this year. And one of my dreams is that one day, like my future kid will apply to try and get into the Founders Club, and maybe they won't get in, maybe they will get in. We'll see. No nepotism, but I think that would be a cool thing to build something that people for generations want to be a part of.
Yeah, there's no way a Spivak's not getting into the Founders Club. Come on.
Hey. You got to meet the requirements.
Okay. We don't do nepotism over here. Well, I like it. Okay, Aaron. Well, it was so great to chat with you. Where can people find you? And if you had to leave, I guess, one last piece of advice for anyone that might be listening, maybe a Jewish founder, someone that's recently new to Miami, someone that's looking to sell a business, what would you tell those people?
I would say to first discover or have the intent to discover why you want what you think you want. So if you want millions of dollars or a ton of followers or to exit a business or to whatever it is that you want, do your best to just continually ask yourself why. And typically I find if people can ask themselves why at least 5 times, like, oh, because I want money. Why do you want money? Well, because I want security. Why do you want security? Well, because I didn't have it as a kid. Great, we're getting closer. So peel back the onion to the point where you understand what your real motivation is, because that becomes your foundation. And if it doesn't always have to be a positive motivation, but if it's a strong enough motivation, it'll be there for you when you do inevitably face extremely difficult times, because a bad day is coming, not just in your business, but just in your life. And I like to say, like, these are the good days. Bad days absolutely coming. And without a strong foundation, you will inevitably crumble. It just happens time and time again. And then the next part to your question is, if you check that box and you want to get going, is you need to find your tribe. You need to find your community. And it might not be us, depending on where you're at, but wherever your community is, you need to find it, because you need to surround yourself with like-minded people. We've all heard the statistic is if the 5 closest people around you smoke cigarettes, the statistical likelihood rounded to the nearest number that you smoke a cigarette is 100%. So if we know that to be true about something as simple as a cigarette, then that's also to be true about every other area of your life. So if all your friends are cheating on their wives, the likelihood that you cheat on your wife is quite high. If all your friends are super loyal, hardworking, the likelihood that you become that is very high. And that applies to every bucket of your life. If your friends are all eating fast food and don't care about their health and make fun of you when you have a weird gas machine in your kitchen, then over time you're going to be like, you know what? I don't really want to get into that. So you have to be very mindful of the people you spend the most amount of time with. And in today's world, because this COVID, no longer exists, you can be intentional and be like, you know what, I'm going to be part of that community and that community and that community. And it's like fantastic.
Yeah, being selective about who you surround yourself with is huge. And I think even just being in your late 20s, early 30s like you are and like I am, you get to that age where you really start to get selective about who you spend your time with and start to realize that that is what matters most. And those are the people that are reflective of you as a person. So
definitely. Where can people find me? Just, I don't know, Instagram. I do make a YouTube video every 2 weeks.
Okay.
It's all about building the brand, and it's kind of like a vlog, and we document. So it's a lot more like behind the scenes stuff, typically about 10 minutes. So just my name on YouTube or Instagram. I used to do TikTok like 4 years ago, and then I don't anymore. Maybe I should again.
Maybe you should get back on TikTok.
Tell Ned. I don't know. And LinkedIn. Oh, I post a lot on LinkedIn.
Okay. We'll find you on LinkedIn.
We'll connect, but don't, yeah.
Connect on LinkedIn. Slide into Aaron's DMs.
No, I was going to say don't slide into DMs because Ned manages the DMs on all channels. But I'm happy to meet people. We do a lot of events. So if you are a founder and you want to check the stuff out, you can DM the Founders Club on Instagram and find out which event you can get yourself to.
Cool. Well, thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.